It didn't happen in silence. No, silence is what came later. After the plates were cleared, after the driveway emptied, after the wine glasses were rinsed and set out to dry. But the moment itself, the real wound, was born in noise. That brunch at Laura's sister's house outside St. Louis. It was the kind of event people like to post about. Matching napkins, mimosas sweating in tall flutes, children in clean shirts with gelled hair. Laughter loud enough to convince everyone this was joy, not performance. Laura was laughing before we even stepped out of the car. I saw her through the windshield, that glow she puts on when she's back in her territory. Her sister's place was practically a stage. She walked through the front door and became someone else. Or maybe just someone I didn't know. I stayed close behind her, carrying the casserole she made, the one I paid for, the one I cooked while she dried her hair upstairs. No one thanked me for it. I think her sister said, "Oh, just set it over there." And that was it. I found a corner. Not the couch, that was for family. I sat in one of those uncomfortable chairs off to the side. The kind that look nice in pictures but make your back ache after 20 minutes. I watched. That's what I do at these things. I watch. Laura floated from one person to the next like a well-loved hostess, even though the house wasn't hers. She was radiant. Like the years melted off her in this house, surrounded by people who remembered her before me. Back when she still had a husband who was loved by default. Back when she didn't marry a man who would always be introduced as a second draft. I noticed Megan the moment we walked in. Her daughter, mid-20s, blonde like Laura but meaner. Not in the obvious way, not in a way you could accuse. She had that sharpness young women get when they've been told their whole life that their opinion matters more than their empathy. She hugged Laura first, of course. Long, tight, emotional. They whispered something to each other. Megan glanced at me over her mother's shoulder. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just assessed. That look. I've seen it before. The scan. The unspoken audit. Every time it ends with the same conclusion. I don't belong. I tried to play along. I said hello to the people I was supposed to greet. I offered to help in the kitchen. Laura waved me off. "Just relax," she said, as if that was ever a possibility in a house like this. So I sat. I watched. I listened. They talked about vacations. About Laura's sister's new patio furniture. About flights to Denver. About whose kids were doing what. It was all polite and pleasant and sharp-edged. The way glass can be smooth until it breaks. And then it came. Megan was seated near the center of the room. Surrounded. Comfortable. She had her arm hooked around her wineglass and her legs crossed in a way that said she owned the space. She was mid-story, something about her apartment, some joke about an ex-boyfriend. Everyone was laughing. And then, like a side note, like it didn't matter, she said, "Michael's always just around, isn't he? Like the furniture. Never in charge of anything but always there." There was a beat, a half-second of hesitation, where the room had to decide if it was going to laugh. And then it did. Someone chuckled. Someone else said, "Well, he's reliable furniture at least." The whole room swelled with polite amusement, the kind that kills you without raising its voice. I didn't flinch. Not on the outside. I stared at the stem of my glass and let the words soak in. I looked up, looked across the room. Laura smiled. Not a grimace. Not a look of discomfort. A real smile. Like the comment hadn't hurt. Like she didn't even notice it. And that's when it clicked. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't accidental. This was the story they told about me when I wasn't there, and sometimes when I wasn't family. I was tolerated. I was the man who paid for the food but didn't belong at the table. I was the extra seat in the car, the empty room in the house. Useful. Not respected. I swallowed hard. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. Nobody said anything else. Nobody corrected Megan. Nobody told her that was rude or unnecessary or cruel. Because to them it wasn't. It was truth. Wrapped in humor. Served during brunch. And I sat there, nodding like it didn't tear something out of me. That's the part they don't see. The silent calculations. The cost of pretending you didn't just hear what you heard. of pretending you didn't just realize you'd been auditioning for a role no one intended to cast you in. Megan kept talking. She pivoted to some story about her boss. People laughed again. The moment passed, for them. For me, it lodged. It stayed. Because in that laugh, I heard the verdict. You don't matter. You're tolerated. And your wife agrees. I watched Laura sip her wine. The glass caught the light just right, and for a second she looked like someone else entirely. Someone I couldn't reach. I tried to remember the last time she defended me in front of Megan. The last time she interrupted that tone. Those remarks, the little jabs dressed up as jokes. I couldn't think of one. And then I remembered something worse. A night 2 years ago. I had taken Megan's car to get serviced. Oil change, tires rotated. I paid for it myself. She didn't ask me to. I just did it because she was Laura's daughter, and I wanted, God help me, to be seen. When I brought it back, she didn't thank me. Not really. She looked at the receipt and said, "You didn't have to go so overboard. My real dad could have handled it." I told Laura that night. Her response? She didn't mean it like that. Yes, she did. They all mean it like that. I thought of every Christmas I helped organize. Every gift I bought for Megan because Laura said, "She's still family." Every check I wrote, every vacation I helped fund, every dinner I cooked so Laura wouldn't have to. I was never the father, never the head of the family, never the respected man at the table. I was the help, and no one ever thanks the help. The rest of the brunch blurred after that. A sea of fake laughter, of conversations I wasn't invited into. I refilled Laura's drink. She didn't say thank you. Megan made another joke later. I didn't catch it all, but the punchline was me. I know it was. Her eyes flicked to me as she said it. And Laura laughed. They laughed together. Mother and daughter. I left the room after that. Said I needed air. No one followed me. No one noticed. I walked out onto the deck, stood in the shadow of that beige vinyl house, and watched the wind move through a line of identical trees. And I realized, they don't see me. Not really. I'm not a husband. I'm not a father. I'm a placeholder. A background character in their carefully curated family narrative. And no matter how much I give, how much I bend, how long I endure, they've already decided who I am. Furniture. Always present. Never in charge. The moment passed. The brunch ended. Hugs were given. Photos were taken. I stood off to the side in every one of them. We drove home in silence. Laura smiled to herself, scrolling through the pictures on her phone. "That went well," she said. I didn't answer, because that day something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not visibly, but deep. The kind of crack that doesn't heal. The kind that spreads. I had spent years pouring myself into a family that never asked for me, only for what I could give. And in that house, on that sunny deck, with those wine glasses and pastel napkins, I finally saw it. They don't want a man. They want a wallet with hands. And I gave them both. But even that wasn't enough. A week passed. Nothing was said about the brunch. Laura didn't bring it up, and I didn't ask if she remembered Megan's comment. I already knew the answer. She remembered. She just didn't care the way I needed her to. That's how it goes. In this house, pain is something you're expected to digest silently, like leftovers someone else forgot to put away. I went back to work. Emails, deadlines, a stack of bills with my name on them, grocery runs no one thanked me for, noise in the house, footsteps, voices, but no acknowledgement. No one apologized. And then it happened. I was at the hardware store when my chest started to tighten. Not the kind of pressure you get from anxiety or a bad night's sleep. This was different. Heavier. Hot. Like someone was pressing a brick into my ribs. I dropped a pack of screws. My hands wouldn't work properly. I drove myself to the hospital. Don't ask me how. I shouldn't have. But I didn't want to bother anyone. I thought maybe it was indigestion. Maybe if I sat in the parking lot for a while, it would pass. Didn't. The ER doors opened into fluorescent chaos. I don't remember everything. Just flashes. Cold air. A nurse's hand on my wrist. My name on a clipboard. Then a blur. Machines. Wires. Noise. my body going somewhere I couldn't follow. When I came to, everything was white. A doctor stood beside me, reading from a chart. Heart attack. Blockage. Lucky I came in when I did. They said I could have died. Just like that. One more hour and I wouldn't have made it. They asked if there was someone they should call. Family. That word again. I hesitated. Then I said, my daughter. I gave them Emily's number. My daughter from my first marriage. She was all I had, really, the only one who ever reached out without needing something. They called. Left a message. She called back 2 hours later. Said she was about to board a cruise. That it had been planned for months. That she was sorry, but she couldn't cancel now. I hope you recover quickly, Dad, she said. We'll talk when I'm back. Then she hung up. And I was alone again. It should have devastated me. But it didn't. Instead, it clarified something. I lay in that bed, wires in my arms, machines beeping softly, and I realized I had spent most of my life as an emergency contact for people who would never show up in mine. I had paid for braces, tuition, rent. I had cooked, driven, fixed. I had shown up, always. And yet, when I was hooked to a monitor in a sterile hospital room, no one showed up for me. Not Laura. Not Megan. Not Emily. They had plans. They had comfort. And I had a list of transactions disguised as relationships. I made the call that night. Not to Emily. Not to Laura. To my lawyer. The man I hadn't spoken to in years. Change my beneficiary, I said. And remove the medical proxy. I'll send the updated names tomorrow. The voice on the other end asked if I was sure. I was, and that was it. One decision. Quiet. Clean. No fights. No warnings. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I simply adjusted the system. I made a second call, to a friend I hadn't spoken to since college. He worked for the airline. I gave him the date, the destination, the name. Emily's cruise was canceled 3 hours before departure. A mechanical issue, the airline said. Rescheduled to a week later. She never knew why. I didn't want revenge. I wanted silence. Space. Boundaries enforced not with words, but with absence. When the nurse came in the next morning, she asked if anyone was coming to sit with me. No, I said. No one's coming. She smiled gently, then moved on. And I was okay with that, because for the first time I wasn't pretending. For years, I had made my life a bridge between people who never meant to cross it. I had extended myself until I was stretched thin, hoping one day someone would meet me in the middle. But no one ever came, so I stopped building bridges. I tore them down. In the hospital, I made lists, things that were mine, accounts, policies, authorizations, lines of responsibility. Everything that once defaulted to the family would now go where it was earned. And what had they earned? Nothing. When I was discharged, Laura didn't pick me up. She didn't offer. She texted. Let me know if you're okay. Megan's in town, we're having dinner with her tonight. That's all it said. No question mark. No visit. I took a cab. I sat in the back seat, watching the city blur past, and I felt something inside me settle. I wasn't angry. I was done. That night, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and watched Laura brushing her hair. She looked at me in the mirror and smiled faintly. You're home. I am, I said. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She didn't stand. I sat on the edge of the bed, looked at her, thought about all the times I had been the one to fold her into my arms, to carry the weight, to make the effort. And now, she didn't even pause her routine. I looked at her and thought, I could disappear right now, and you'd only notice when the bills stopped being paid. So I made the changes. I updated the insurance, the accounts, the credit cards, the deed to the cabin, the executor of my will. The only name left was mine, because that's all that was ever real. No arguments, no slammed doors, just one silent decision, not made in anger, made in clarity. I used to think loyalty was about staying even when you're ignored. Now I know better. Loyalty without respect is servitude. And I was done serving people who couldn't be bothered to ask if I was still breathing. It happened on a Tuesday. Not that the day matters, but I remember it because of the silence that followed. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and a copy of the policy revisions spread in front of me. A small, cold stack of paper that meant more than any conversation ever had. The house was quiet. Laura had gone out, brunch again, this time with Megan. Of course, I didn't ask where. I didn't ask when she'd be back. I just left the envelope on the counter. Not in a drawer. Not hidden. Right there. Where it couldn't be missed. Inside was the new will. The new insurance paperwork. The form removing her as power of attorney. And one letter, short, clinical, no warmth. Just a simple explanation. I've updated all records to reflect the boundaries you've demonstrated through words and action. This is not punishment. This is adjustment. That was all. I went for a walk. 2 hours, maybe 3. I don't know where. Through the neighborhood. Past lawns I'd mowed for years. Down the street where I once patched a neighbor's gutter just because he'd asked. I saw kids playing. Saw couples holding hands. Saw families loading into SUVs. None of them looked like me. By the time I returned, the envelope was gone. I found Laura in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the letter like it had betrayed her. She didn't speak at first. When she finally did, her voice was small. Not angry, just disoriented. "What is this?" "You read it," I said. "Yes, but why?" She sounded confused, like someone who just realized the meal had been cleared before they were done eating. "You said nothing," I told her. "When they mocked me, when I lay in a hospital bed alone, when Megan made jokes about the man who paid for her degree, you said nothing. So I've stopped assuming that silence is neutral." Her face twisted. "I didn't know you were in the hospital." "No," I said. "You didn't ask. Not once." A pause. Then her voice sharpened. "So you're just cutting us out? Just like that?" I shook my head. "Not cutting. Adjusting. I gave what I wasn't required to give. Now I'm simply done giving it." She stood, crossed her arms. "You're overreacting. This is emotional. We've had bad weeks before. You don't just..." It wasn't 1 week that stopped her. It wasn't a comment. Or a brunch. It's been years, Laura. Years of being tolerated in my own home. Of paying for everything while getting treated like I'm temporary. Like I'm the help. Like I should be grateful for being allowed to exist in the margins of your daughter's life. She blinked. Swallowed hard. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, steady, holding the truth like a weight I was finally ready to let fall. You all wanted a man who would stay, who would pay, who wouldn't ask for acknowledgement. And I did that. But I nearly died. And no one noticed. No one cared. And that made everything clear. She looked down at the papers in her hands. Her fingers curled around them. "You're saying this is my fault?" I didn't answer, because the truth didn't need to be spoken anymore. It had already been signed, notarized, delivered. She sat down again, hard, like her knees had lost strength. And I realized then, she wasn't sad. She was surprised. Surprised that I had drawn a line. Surprised that I had learned how to say no. That was what shocked her. Not the changes. The fact that I had finally acted like I mattered. She whispered, "Does Emily know?" "She knows I was in the hospital." That's all she needed to know. Laura looked at me then, really looked, and something flickered behind her eyes. Fear, maybe, or guilt, or just the recognition that the system she had taken for granted was no longer working quietly in the background. The invisible gears had stopped turning, and now everything would have to run on its own. I left her there, didn't wait for more questions. That night, Megan called. I didn't answer. She called again, then texted, then again. Eventually, I picked up. Her voice was too sweet, too measured, like someone trying to charm their way past a locked gate. "Hey, I heard Mom's upset. She said something about you changing things?" I said nothing. She laughed, nervously. "Come on, Michael. Don't be like this. We were just joking at brunch. You know I didn't mean anything by it." I waited, silence on the other end. Then, "Did you really change the life insurance?" "Yes." What about the cabin? No longer yours. The line went dead for a second. Then she said, quieter now. You're serious. I nearly died alone, I said. And no one noticed. So I'm making sure the people who notice get what's left of me. She was quiet. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a comeback. Finally, she said, I didn't think you'd actually do it. I nodded. Exactly. I hung up, and then I turned my phone off. That weekend, Laura tried again. She brought me coffee, sat on the edge of my desk, touched my shoulder the way she used to when we first met. I didn't move. You're serious about all this, she said. I looked at her. Wouldn't you be? Her eyes welled up. You're not even angry. That's what scares me. You're just gone. No, I said. I'm just not pretending anymore. She nodded, slowly. And that's when I knew it had finally reached her. Not through yelling, not through some grand fight, but through stillness, through the absence of access. The silence of a man who once gave everything, and then quietly took it all back. There was no final fight, no yelling, no thrown dishes, no bags packed in a rage. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that comes after a storm has stripped the trees bare. Not silence from peace, but silence from loss. Laura moved around the house differently after that day. Quieter, slower. She didn't ask me to change anything back. Not directly, but I saw it in the small things. The way she hesitated before using the credit card. The way she lingered outside my office door at night without knocking. The way she watched her phone after Megan texted, not replying right away. Once I found her reading over the insurance forms again. Her name crossed out. The beneficiary listed as a foundation I had quietly supported for years. One she'd never asked about. She didn't bring it up. Because she knew. The old system was gone. The quiet machine that had powered her life had been shut down. Not as revenge. Just as correction. The house still stood. The lights stayed on. But everything felt thinner. More fragile. As if the walls knew what had changed before the people did. Emily never did reach out again. I didn't chase her. I didn't call to explain why her cruise was canceled. Why her name was removed from the forms. She didn't ask. That silence was her answer. Megan called once more. This time after she learned she wasn't listed as a secondary beneficiary. Her voice was flatter now. Less sweet. All performance gone. I guess this means we're not family, she said. You decided that, I replied. You're punishing me, she snapped. No, I said. I'm just believing you. She hung up. That was the last time I heard her voice. Laura never asked me to fix things with Megan. That surprised me. Maybe she knew it would be pointless. Maybe she finally understood what she had allowed to rot. One evening, weeks later, she stood by the doorway of my study, holding 2 mugs of tea. She handed me one, sat down across from me. I miss how things used to be, she said softly. I don't, I answered. She flinched just slightly. I looked her in the eye. I miss what I thought things were. But now I know better. I know I wasn't a husband. I was a function, provider. And when that function stopped serving the family's comfort, I was treated like a fault in the system. She opened her mouth to defend, maybe, to deny. But no words came, because deep down she knew it was true. I sipped the tea. It was warm, bitter, appropriate. This isn't about the money, I said. It's about dignity. I gave myself to this house, to this family, without hesitation. I gave love, work, attention. And in return I was mocked, forgotten, replaced by silence. Laura stared into her mug. I didn't mean to let that happen. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. We didn't speak again for the rest of the night. The next morning she left early. Said she was meeting a friend. I didn't ask who. She was gone for hours. When she returned, she didn't kiss me hello. Didn't offer a smile. She just went upstairs. And I went back to the quiet. That became our pattern. Not war. Not peace. Just the quiet space between 2 people who once built a life, then quietly watched it decay. A few weeks later, A letter arrived in Megan's handwriting. It was short, cold. I just wanted you to know you've hurt my mother more than you realize. She's been crying. She doesn't say it, but I see it. If your goal was to make her feel like nothing, congrats. You've succeeded. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just blame, disguised as concern. I didn't respond, because they still didn't understand. I didn't make Laura feel like nothing. I simply stopped pretending I was nothing. And without that pretense, the entire illusion collapsed. They wanted the money, the effort, the devotion, but never the man. So I gave them what they truly wanted: distance. No theatrics, no threats, just removal. Like a man turning off a faucet after years of letting it leak, drip by drip, into a drain that led nowhere. Sometimes I hear Laura crying at night. I don't move, not because I don't feel it, but because I've finally accepted that feeling it is not the same as fixing it. I fixed everything for years. This time they can sit with the consequences. Eventually, Laura began sleeping in the guest room. No conversation, just a slow, quiet migration. She started making her own meals. We became housemates, shadows in the same space. And still, no one asked me to undo what I had done. Because somewhere inside them, they all knew it was never mine to fix. I received a call from my lawyer the following month. Just confirming. You still want everything locked? Yes, I said. No changes to Laura's access? None. He hesitated. You understand what that means if anything happens to you? I do. And I meant it. Because I'd already been dying. Slowly, quietly, while they smiled and joked and leaned on a man they didn't love but couldn't afford to lose. I had died in that brunch. I had died in the hospital bed. Now I was just living with the clarity. One evening, as the sun was sinking low, Laura sat beside me on the porch. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she whispered, I wish I'd done things differently. I looked out at the trees. So do I. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold hers either. Some touches are too late. Some bridges can't be rebuilt with silence and regret. We sat there until the light was gone. And that was the closest we ever got to closure. No tearful reconciliations. No grand gestures. Just two people in the aftermath of something neither could name without choking on the truth. I don't know where we go from here, but I know what I won't do. I won't carry what isn't mine anymore. I won't fix a house that only wanted the sound of my hammer, not the man holding it. I won't rebuild a family that never wanted me, only what I gave. So I leave you with this. Was I wrong to walk away from people who only stayed close enough to take? Was I cruel for letting the silence speak louder than my service ever did? Or was it the only honest choice left, after all the lies we'd called love? You tell me, because I stopped asking them.